I'm Brady Forrest, and this is Ignite Where. And we're going to have a bunch of great geek talks for you tonight, and then we're going to follow that up with a fun award ceremony, hence all the chairs. And just to tell you a little bit more about Ignite, it is basically an event for geeks. It's an event for geeks of all types, so that includes geo, mobile, local, whatever your geek passion may be. And I hope that tonight's event really fits that bill for you. Now, what you're going to see here is a series of 5-minute talks where each speaker gets just 20 slides, 15 seconds a slide. And that means that if the speaker isn't quite your cup of tea, you can go get a beer. And even if they still aren't your cup of tea, it's probably going to be amusing anyway because of the format. Now, the schedule is basically we're starting now-ish, 7. Then we're going to have a half hour at the Nav Tech Challenge where we'll have 12 startups, each give a 1-minute pitch, and you'll get to vote for or give your opinion as to which one should win the North American LBS Awards, and then we're going to follow it up with 5 more Ignite speakers. And we have talks ranging from Ushahidi to why app stores suck, to chickens and lasers, to mobile design patterns, and this is pretty typical for an Ignite. Ignites happen around the world now, in over 100 cities, and the topics are generally pretty eclectic, trying to hit basically that geek passion. A couple weeks ago, we actually had Global Ignite Week, which had Ignites in about 60 different places around the world in just 1 week. And topics that some of you would have enjoyed and some of you wouldn't have. You can watch more Ignite videos at igniteshow.com. But without much further ado, I'm going to bring up our first Ignite speaker. He's on the WARE program committee for the past 4 or maybe 5 years. He works out of DC for FortiOS1, and he's been very active in crisis mapping of late. Please welcome Andrew Turner.
Thanks, Brady. Thank you, I guess. So as Brady said, my name's Andrew Turner, and I've been on the committee, I think, 4 years now. But it's been amazing each year, and it's amazing to see everyone's great submissions and what people are thinking of and what's kind of coming up in WARE. And I'll also take this opportunity while my slides are coming up, hopefully this isn't counting against me, to mention WareCamp this weekend, warecamp.org. Everyone should check it out. So what I want to talk about is looking, as Brady mentioned, I moved to DC, is looking at all this great technology we're building and using and how people are using it, and looking at where we can actually use where it matters. How can we actually make a positive impact on both our communities and the world with this? So we look at this great amount of technology that's been made available. I mean, look at satellites and the amount of raw engineering power that makes these things, the energy to get these things launched up and to be able to observe the Earth and planets and space and our environment and people and down to very micro levels. And so what are we doing with it? We're finding out where cool coffee shops are, where our friends are. And these are all very, very fun things. I can go and find out where I took my photographs and how to get to the nearest metro station, which are all kind of very fun, compelling things we're all working on. But we're really going to think, what is our legacy we want to leave behind here? You know, what in the end will people remember us for? You know, what will we have done? What will I have been mayor of in the future? And thinking like, this is really cool stuff, but how can I actually make potentially a bigger difference with all this great stuff and this huge community I have around me? As Brady mentioned, I moved to DC about 1.5 years ago, August of 2008, I guess. And nestled in there between the crux of the Potomac River is, you know, the U.S. national government and multinational NGOs and a huge amount of people doing really meaningful things. And now we have this ability to take social media and smartphones and devices and networks and start bringing a transparency to our democracy and our process in the U.S. So looking at things like, do I have voting ballots and how long was my wait? But looking beyond just the U.S. is also looking internationally. So Patrick will talk later about Ushahidi and the ability to apply these open source platforms to doing democracy and transparency and access across the world, to India, to Iran, to Kenya, to numerous other countries, and start seeing and applying this technology to really, really meaningful things. And so now in the US, we have this new administration that's really kind of pushing this idea of change and transparency, participation, and collaboration. You can see here a nice little OpenStreetMap even on the Change White House website. So it's really starting to push this, and there's actually becoming federal mandates on pushing out this technology and really engaging with developers with the government. So much that they actually even publish reports. There's always 80% of data is location-based. The government actually publishes 74% of the services for citizens is geospatial in nature. So the government recognizes a huge amount of what they're doing is geospatial, and it's not just about the US, it's about the globe. So Mikkel will talk later this week about the great work in Nairobi and Kibera, but all across the world now engaging citizens to actually harness their own data and be active participants in what they're doing and how they're engaging with the government. and thinking at various other cruxes of what we're dealing with. So global environmental change, food security, crisis response, development aid. So there's all these really, really important, tractable problems that we now have technology, communities, and people that can engage and discuss around things and the mandates to do them and engage with them. So it's thinking about how these things apply globally around the world, but in the end, acting locally, how to affect the single person on the ground and provide the needs that they need and engage them, and not just providing something, but letting them actually come back and be part of that conversation and acting very locally. So following Where and Where Camp last year, we had a crisis camp in DC, and out of that, John Crowley talked a lot about the work they've done out in Monterey and having these camps. So a bunch of geohackers descended for a weekend, did an amazing amount of work in developing and gluing together a whole bunch of technologies, things that we talked about in workshops at OpenStreetMap and walking papers, and deploying this to Afghanistan and other countries. So now we've had Crisis Commons now, which in the past several months, in response to Haiti and then Chile, several thousand people across the world have come on their weekends and volunteered to build brand new iPhone apps and SMS applications, people finder applications, and services to make available. And these are saving lives on the ground. Here's just an example of a search and rescue team using OSM on their GPS units in Haiti. It made all the difference in them knowing where they were, where the responders were, and where people were that were entrapped, and making that data available and now usable even by the government. And transparency isn't necessarily just about being a cool, hot topic. It's actually about mitigating disaster. So Arkansas realizes that when the disaster happens, that people go to Tennessee or they go to Illinois, they won't necessarily come to Arkansas. So if their data is as broadly available as possible, people can then use it in helping Arkansas when they're in a disaster. So thinking about also these interfaces, so only 24% of the world has access to the internet, but 80% live within cell phone coverage, and 50% of the world own a mobile phone. So thinking about appropriate interfaces too. Thinking about SMS and the power now you have in terms of a bidirectional communication device all around the world. So we can do really well about helping find our friends and helping sell more $4 lattes in Soma. And this is all very interesting stuff. But if you can use that same technology to help a child in a village find water and live a better life and get education, think of the broad, lasting impact that'll have both in your life and your community and the world. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Work like this is really kind of at the heart of Where 2.0, and we'll hear a number of talks this week that focus not only on the work in Haiti, the work in Kibera, and then also some work that Jeffrey Warren did in Peru. Now, we've really expanded into mobile this year, and one of the big issues right now is whether or not an app developer should go web or native. Jonathan Stark's here to give his opinion.
Thanks a lot. I cannot imagine a better lead-in to what I'm about to say. That was perfect. Thank you, Andrew. I almost don't even have anything to say. I am in love with the mobile web for exactly the reasons that we just saw, that the majority of the world is connected to the web over cell phones. This is a huge difference. It's an epic win. This is a big, huge deal. Developing countries completely skipped over the desktop. They're accessing the internet for important information on a daily basis on cell phones. The reason why I hate the App Store, the reason why the App Store sucks, which is what I'm here to rant about, is that it hurts. It pulls away resources from changing the world for the better. It's pulling away. It's confusing. Like, developers basically are getting dollar signs in their eyes, in my opinion. And making money is fine, but come on. Depressing example. A native app developer created a translator app for Haitian Creole and English during the disaster. And that sat in the App Store approval process for hours, days, weeks. I don't know how long exactly, but it was a long time until eventually someone DM'd me on Twitter, and within 45 minutes, I made a web app that was available to the whole wide world for free, that was potentially saving lives, at least making lives better. I don't know exactly. But what kills me about this is that the developer, who I'm sure had the skills, didn't think to build a web app. Steve, in 2007, came up and said, if you want to build apps for the iPhone, build web apps. And I was stoked. I was like, that's brilliant. It's going to push the mobile web. It's going to push the mobile browsers. It's going to make everything better for everyone. Unfortunately, apparently, it wasn't a good business decision, but because they ended up changing their minds. But let me just quickly say what a web app is. A web app is just a web page that's optimized for the phone. And it's not complicated. Anybody can do it. It's no big deal, but it's extremely powerful because anybody can make these apps, almost anybody. It's very simple. Like I said, Steve came up on stage a few months later in 2008 and said, I changed my mind. We are going to have an SDK. We're going to have an app store, and we're going to have this gold rush of developers being siphoned off to making, novelty apps, let's just say. So now the difference between a native app and a web app is that native apps are a little bit slicker, they're a little bit, fancier, and they can access the accelerometer if you need that, and the camera if you need that, and that's all well and good. But eventually, these developers, harsh reality started to set in. And as it was well publicized, thank you, Flickr rules. The harsh reality started to set in, and it turns out that dealing with the App Store is kind of a pain in the butt. They might reject your app. My favorite pet peeve about the App Store is there's no good way to do a large public beta test with your application. So if you want to make it bug-free before you put it in the App Store, you've got a major problem on your hands. I don't think that's very cool. So what ends up happening is developers spend all their time shotgunning lots of simple, stupid applications into the App Store because they're just trying to get a hit. Why spend 6 months making a masterpiece that's going to change the world and just have it get rejected potentially? All right, so Google and everybody else saw that there was a big, this is obviously a big movement, and there's supposed to be over 100 Android devices released this year, 100. All right? So as developers, we have to deal with fragmentation. We have to decide, are we going to develop for a particular platform, like maybe an Xbox, essentially? The iPhone is kind of like an Xbox to me. It's consumer electronics. This isn't a computing platform to me. You have to decide which store you're going to get in bed with. You've only got really resources for one choice. Let's be honest. You can't be supporting 2 different code bases, 2 different content policies, 2 different approval processes. It just doesn't make sense. You're going to pick one. Therefore, web apps start to sound pretty cool. They have their limitations, but it's really not that bad when you consider that you're going to be on every platform that has a modern web browser. That's going to be everything. Your refrigerator is going to have a web browser on it. One thing, if you remember nothing else from my talk today, one thing I want to tell you is that web apps can run offline. This is the limitation that people always throw back in my face, and it's not true. They can run offline. So please remember that. Not only can they run offline, but you can make hybrid apps out of them. So they're kind of like 2 things. Hybrid apps, with something like PhoneGap, you can take a web app and wrap it in this native wrapper and deploy it to all these platforms and access the cool features like the accelerometer, etc. So what I always tell people, developers, is that if you can build your app with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, then you probably should, and please do. So thank you very much. That's my time.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. This is kind of like a preview for the next couple of days. Jason Grigsby will be talking more about this tomorrow in the mobile track. But now we're going to have a talk on maps coming to life from poor, hobbled Dylan Phillips. Please welcome them.
Thanks, everyone. I also couldn't think of a better introduction than previously. So when I was thinking about coming here, I looked at the diversity of people that are on the attendee list. And I figured we are all coming here to figure out how cartography and technology come together for our own purposes. And I realized that maps are a part of everyone's life. We've been using maps to annotate our world from our earliest memories. And we've used maps collectively to tell the stories of hunting paths or war victories for as long as we can remember. But the problem with maps is, like childhood memories, maps fade with time. They're not dynamic, and they're very expensive to create. So we make all this investment in creating a map, and what tends to happen is it no longer becomes relevant. It goes from personal to historical. Dynamic maps are special because they take the expensive static information and attach markup to create something that's relevant to a certain community, a real explosion of relevant content. But we can't take those dynamic maps out into the world, at least the way that I think we're eventually going to do it. The conjunction of minification, user expectation, and Moore's law hasn't happened. But I think these devices fundamentally change things. I think they reset user expectations. Certainly they have broad-based user adoption. And the most important thing is they're mobile. And if maps are about anything, they're about getting out in the world. Now, right now, Android and iPhone completely dominate this space. They don't dominate this space in units sold, but they dominate this space in usage. I know a lot of people that can't be separated from their iPhone. I think sociologically that's kind of sad, but economically that's a huge opportunity. But these are not homogeneous platforms. Even in Apple's vertical market, you see significant fragmentation in the capabilities of the devices. So for instance, the original iPhone and the 3G don't have a compass. And Android fragmentation is a whole different ballgame. Lots of different OSs in the wild, lots of different platforms. These are real developer challenges. I think Google's eventually going to get a handle on this, but they certainly don't have it now. So in October, I went to ISMAR to see how other people are doing neat stuff with geolocation with these challenges. I met the people who are building the AR browsers and the academics who are building what's next. And to me, AR browsers were sexy. It's a super simple idea. Basically, you're adding meta information over the camera to create this really visceral and dynamic experience that really connects with the user. For me, I chose Layer. I liked Layer because they were able to deploy to multiple different operating systems. They could deploy to all the Android devices, and they could deploy to the iPhone GS. They cannot deploy to the iPhone and the iPhone G because that lacked a compass. But the cool thing about Layer was the layer in Layer. Layer didn't silo the information. Rather, they acted as a proxy so my users could get to me, and I'm the one who can provide the most relevant content to my user. So right away, I started to build applications on Layer and send it out to my user community. And I was surprised to find that while my users thought that augmented reality was super sexy at the beginning and had some real problems, and that was really disappointing. So I've had a lot of deployments and really listened to my users and heard what they said. And what they said was they love maps. Now, nothing confuses a geek more than when their user says, "We really like the simple solution." You know, my users want contextual, small data sets that they can use on their phone. Well, that's easy, but it's not really out there, so I thought about building my own channel. And for me, a channel is an application. It's something that separates me from the stuff I want to know. And of course, the channel that was sexy at the time was native applications. But native applications have a lot of challenges. First, they take a long time to install. And you get all kinds of places where you can get hung up. You can get trolls on your reviews. You can have problems with connectivity during downloads. And your user can learn not to love you. And if your user doesn't love you, you're toast. We are all competing for our users' mind share. And it only takes 3 steps to delete an application. And once we're deleted, we're not likely getting back. So I started to think about ways in which we could deploy applications that were immutable. Immutable is nerd speak for can't be deleted. And like these folks, I figured out that WebKit is on 96% of the browsers, and 100% of these phones can do SMS, MMS, and phone services. So I started to build applications around that architecture. There's no way I can explain it, but I'm super excited to talk to the people that are here that are working in this environment so I can share what I've learned and hear what you've learned as well. Thank you for your time. Have a great conference.
Thank you very much, Dylan. In case you weren't in the AR session earlier today, Simple Geo is actually going to be open sourcing their augmented reality kit next week, their augmented reality SDK. Now, a lot of the software and technology and websites that we talk about at Where2O are built on open source. And there's always a balance between making money from it and contributing back to it. And Sophia's here to talk about that.
Hi. Okay, well, let me start off. Making money at a nonprofit. You can actually look at, this is our office. So we're not your usual nonprofit. We actually have a lot of money. And this is our founder, Mark Gorton. He's probably most famous for being the CEO of LimeWire, though that's not his primary company. He gave us the charge of doing good stuff. And our organization is called the Open Planning Project. And the particular part of the organization is OpenGeo. And so what do? What we do is we make open source for government trip planners for the city of Portland. We do transportation reform. We do lots of different things like that. Tools for civic empowerment so you can go and narc on civil servants that are parking in the wrong place. About a year ago, after being funded for about, say, 9, 10 years, very well, nice offices, we were told to be sustainable, which means that we had to go and make our own money rather than taking marks, which is actually a good thing. So as a group of us for OpenGeo, we were thinking, how are we going to do this? So this is actually taken off of our rooftop penthouse, which all the stuff is going to go away in a year. So we're enjoying as much as we can right now. So we got together, tried to think about how we're going to do it, and we had several different models of making money. The first model is using a boutique model, which is already what we do. We do a lot of little custom developments for people. We do open source. We contribute it back into the community. But as a model, we don't make that much money at it. The other model that we actually do also as well is whale hunting. Now, whale hunting is great. We make a lot of money from that. We get large contracts. But what it does, it detracts away from our open source focus and mission. We have to pull a lot of people off of different projects. So the other thing that we're doing right now is becoming beekeepers. Pentaho, James Dixon, he has this whole metaphor of building products where the open source community are the bees, we are the bee farm, and we provide software to farmers. So we have 3 ways of making money. And the way we do it is by building these products, we put support and training around them, and we do customer-focused development, which in part is whale hunting, as well as some of the boutique work that we do. So, talking about revenue, again, the boutique stuff is not that great in terms of making revenue. Whale hunting is awesome in terms of revenue, but very disruptive in terms of an open source community. And finally, we're doing the product stuff. That's something we've started within the past year. So talk a little bit about our competitors. Who are our competitors? I'll say the evil word. Our competitors are Esri, as they now want to be called. We want to widen into their market share. And their other competitor as well is Google, which happens to do no evil, but they do tend to kill business plans once a week. So where are we going to get our more customers? Obviously, we're going to steal some from ESRI if possible, because some people can't afford their licenses. But we also want to go and get customers as well from Google as well, doing maps. So what's going to occur is a lot of organizational changes in order for us being a very flat open source project into an actual company that is self-sustainable but stays within our mission. So one of the things that means is that we get more overhead. People like me were hired on to help manage the process. And center of that is our sales director. We're getting marketing people so that we take on more of the trappings of a corporate entity. There's also going to be more process. We do timekeeping. We monitor everybody's time, not because we want to know if they're putting in their 40 hours, but mainly for billing purposes and for efficiency. We want to match up our estimates against the amount of time we do. So we're doing those things. The other thing is that we're creating new organizational teams, cross-functional teams where we're pulling people in that are database experts or JavaScript experts or Java experts and pulling them together into teams that work crosswise so that they build our new products. Now, the big question is, where is my upside? If I am a developer, I'm smart, I'm young, I can go to any company and I can get, basically some sort of upside on that. Well, part of it is we're a very flexible organization. We pay real wages. We don't underpay people. So we have a plan, which is essentially doing some of the boutique work in order to keep on contributing back to the community. We will continue doing some of the large whale hunting type activities in order to get a bit more credibility and get our product out there. So if you have any questions, that's me, Sophia P. at opengeo.org. And I'm also on Twitter at Spera. And this is more pictures of our really wonderful office that we have for now. And actually contributes to our overhead. And the final slide is just basically, I really dislike PowerPoint. So there's a dead kitten out there.
Thank you very much, Sophia, and sorry to all you cat lovers. Our next speaker is going to talk about the intersection of location and mobile. Please welcome game designer Will Carter.
Hey, how's it going? Everybody hear me? So I'm going to talk about something probably a little bit less important, maybe some of you, than a lot of what the people before me have talked about, but mobile design for barns and gas stations in 15 easy steps. We'll do it in 15. That sounds good. Like I said, I'm Will Carter. I started a company called Node Snoop Labs, and I like to think of the stuff we do as being sort of boutique on the boutique side, but also sort of aggressively playful or aggressively weird. So I really like to think about designing for the real world. And that really has a lot of meaning to a lot of people in the room probably here. But thinking about how we can take these devices and really create sort of provocative or meaningful experiences, be they sort of games or whatever, for our environment. So I grew up in Utah, so there's a lot of barns in Utah, and I live in Los Angeles now, so I think about gas stations a lot. And so I think it's really important to think about these things as design challenges, and so that's sort of why I've been presenting this today. So the first step is you got to start with a barn or a gas station. This sounds like a pretty obvious thing, but lots of people would, sort of think, hey, I'll develop the barn and the gas station application. We'll start with the barn, and we'll start, hey, let's incorporate the gas station features, right? So step 2 is never do that. Never design for both a barn and a gas station at the same time. You're going to end up with a cluster thing of this barn here, right? You're going to start incorporating barn features into your gas station application. That's just screwed up. So step 3, you got to pick one thing about that location and really figure out what that thing is about, right? So basically, if I'm at a barn, what am I doing at that barn? Am I raising it? Am I shoveling hay? At the gas station, what am I doing? Am I pumping gas? So step 4, no killer applications here, right? So you're not thinking about developing the barn wayfinding application. Or the sort of nearest Starbucks to this barn. Like, those things are just things that aren't going to happen. So step 5, thinking about space. So I like to think about space as the opportunity. So I think, hey, here's a gas station. What's the opportunity here for me? What can I take with these sort of physical constraints of the space and make it interesting? And the next step is to sort of think about place. And so if space is kind of the opportunity, then place is the reality. It's like giving yourself some constraints about what humans actually do at the place that you're designing for, right? So so step 7, thinking about time. So how much time do I actually have to distract my users? Or to think about, if it's at a gas station, maybe it's like a minute, 2 minutes. At a barn, it could be multiple hours, right? So that's really important. Step 8 is thinking about people. So am I here alone? Am I here with my girlfriend who's mad at me because I'm looking at the application that I built, right? This happens a lot. So that's important. Step 9, bam, worrying about fun. This is really important to me. But if I'm sitting there using the application that you developed for this barn and I'm having less fun in this barn, then there's a serious design flaw with what you just gave me, right? So that's really important for the stuff that I make. So step 10, don't think about what happens if I need to access the barn application while I'm at the gas station, right? This is kind of related to step 2, but it gets you really confused. It makes you sort of have this interface that's kind of confusing. You don't know what exactly you're supposed to do. Step 11, don't worry if your application only works at 70% of the world's barns, because 70% of the world's barns is still a shitload of barns, right? So think about like what your target audience, and if you can get that out to 100% of them, that's more important. So step 12, consider failure. So what happens if your like hay barrel queries for the barn API like get rate limited or something like that? What happens then? You got to consider what's going to happen to your end users, to what might get screwed up. So step 13, work really hard to design applications that work with both barns and gas stations. Okay, so this is kind of counterintuitive for what I've been saying. But if you can think about contextual UI, if your phone knows that you're at a barn, knows that you're at a gas station, it can deliver in a sort of sneaky way, like the sort of specific interface that you've been designing. So it can be really like not this hodgepodge interface that can do like tries to do everything that a barn and a gas station needs to do. So step 14 is like actually just replacing the barn and the gas station with any other place. So these are sort of designed to be universal rules. So, maybe a Justin Bieber concert application, right? No, that didn't work. Okay, whatever. That last thing was a joke, but it didn't work. All right, my bad. All right, I'm all done. Thank you.
Next time, use Lady Gaga. So it's well known that geeks like lasers. So whenever you see a talk come by that has lasers in it, you have to consider it. And there's a little known corollary to that rule that when it's combined with chickens, you have to give the guy at least 5 minutes. So we're here to welcome the founder of Downtown Farm, presenting on chickens and lasers. Please welcome Martin Eisenberg.
Thanks. Nice setup. Beekeeping, barns, Time for some chickens and lasers. My story is Slumdog Millionaire High Tech 2.0. This is a very personal story. My story is real. Jumping into human waste made sense in that movie at one point. It made sense in my story as well. I jumped in human waste so many times. Tonight, it makes sense. Chicken, chicken, chicken. Chicken, chicken. Lasers. I am about to drop a nuclear chicken weapon onto the United States of America. I have infiltrated one of your highly secret government labs and have developed a mighty, mighty weapon. And I'm going to unleash it tonight, combining chickens and lasers. Because boom is what we do. I'm a complete lunatic. You got it by now. Don't believe a word I'm saying. 2 years ago, I tried to kill myself. I bought this house after they locked me up for 1 month in a facility so I wouldn't kill myself. I bought this house to heal myself. It's in a low-income Mexican neighborhood, and I turned this house into an urban farm. And in the process, I healed myself. I got chickens. I started farming. I did everything the therapist said. It worked. It did not only work for me. It transformed the entire neighborhood. I went into this neighborhood. I was scared of them, and they were scared of me because we never talked. I put 3 chickens in the front yard, and everything changed. The kids drew their parents to my fence. They were afraid, and I said, hey, meet Pumpkin, meet Omelette. They realized I was a nice guy, and then one day, this was way bigger. I spent this much money, $127,000, to buy this house from this man. This is a nice house. I have so much money because I'm the cheapest bastard all my life. Ask any girl ever dated me. She will tell you I was the cheapest date she ever had. Block cheese and tubac chuck. This house I will turn into the hottest, hippest urban farm America has ever seen. This is the barnyard. I'm going to have high school kids build chicken coops in Queen Anne Victorian style. And I need a computer because I want to make it hip. I want to bring in the computer. So I asked a guy who is really good at computers, make me a farm computer. And he delivered. He presented you the farm computer to teach kids about high tech in a very, very fun environment. He is a little Navi. Steve kept, he wanted to have me the punline, so he didn't tell you what this thing was for. iPad, a ridiculous name. It was our code word. Guys, I poop all day because that's what our farm animals do. Sticky fingers is perfect. You just wipe off, the chicken can crap right in the middle of it. Lasers, where are the lasers? I don't want people to come to downtown Livermore because I like it there a lot and I want it to be tranquil. I'm going to use cutting-edge remote sensing technology to broadcast my operations to Facebook, iPads, iPods all across the world. Real-time streaming. Farmville going to look so last century. And I'm going to bring in any technology you can think of, remote sensing. Any feed you want, I'm going to install at my farm. I'm going to make green the absolute exhibitionistic thing that's ever happened. And they're going to pay for it. This is not my idea. These are all your ideas. These are people I met throughout my life. All I did, I put together chickens and lasers. That's my only idea. Everybody else had a lot of ideas. You gave me the brains. My mom gave me the passion. My dad gave me the perfectionist. And one girl who I hurt very much, she taught me the one last thing I needed to learn to pull this off. She gave me a tender heart by breaking me completely. I will fix Obama's healthcare problem because all the pills the pharmaceutical industry gave me did not heal me, did not prevent me from killing myself. A little girl with a bunny who was in holistic health, who I mocked my entire life, she healed me. This is cheap. Holistic health is cheap because these people are passionate. Where am I going to go? I think I'm going to go all the way. I will turn the nuclear weapon lab where I'm working, I'm going to turn it into a renewable energy lab before I die. And if nothing happens, Farm Swap, the coolest reality show ever. It's going to happen. And if nothing else happens, I will live in the nicest house in Livermore, play with chickens and lasers for the rest of my life, and I shall be the richest man in the world. By now you know I am a complete lunatic and I need to be put in a cage. But if you institutionalize me again, please go to Livermore and take care of my 3 chicken, the 3 musketeers. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Martin. And now we're going to have an appeal to governments for geodata. Please welcome up Roland.
Howdy. My name's Roland Shield, and I'm here from the government. I'm here to help you. And I'd like to share a couple of ideas just for a few minutes. Transparency in government. And this is the big nugget tonight. Why you came here, and you may not know it, it's this simple summation, which I will expand on, but it's pretty simple, really. In order to make all this technology work, let's first consider what is the mission of government. The maintenance of authority, number one, first and foremost. Many of the actions of politicians and civil servants can be explained by the need to maintain and enhance their power. And that's administrative stuff. Now, I didn't come up with this. Scholastic Magazine and Groyler's Online did, so it's not something that's way out there. I guess it's a way a lot of folks look at government when you get down to it. My simple version is there's really three components of government. First and foremost, the government's objective is to protect and justify their budget. And I know because I'm in government. Second and thirdly, continually increase their size and sphere of influence, and then actively maintain ambiguity of mission. And see the first two above, and that's what really government is about, let's face it. With that in mind, consider transparency. Does it fit in with that model of government, if you agree with it? Analyze, question, challenge budgets. That really is kind of an antithesis to that first idea of protecting and justifying the budget. Similarly, challenging the size and scope of a sphere of influence is also really kind of an antithesis, once again, to that idea of government. And finally, transparency seeks to clarify the mission of government, which is, once again, in direct opposition to the third assumption I had, for the basis of government. I kind of came up with that on my own. But so it's kind of like a dichotomy: government, transparency. Elvis, the anti-Elvis. Elvis is sexy, powerful, ubiquitous, timeless, unchallenged, uninterested in stem cell research. Whereas the anti-Elvis, Michael J. Fox, dorky, weakling, tedious, fades quickly from popular consciousness and keen on stem cell research. So it's kind of like that dichotomy. Fortunately, we have a new administration, and they're all about open government, transparency, participation, and collaboration. And so it's a new way, a new wave at the top. However, consider, I got this out of a recent Slashdot article, that the agencies under the Obama administration cite security provisions to withhold information more often than they did under the Bush administration. For example, the deliberative process for FOIA was used 70,000 times in 2009, up from 47 in 2008. And amusingly, the Associated Press has been waiting 3 months for the government to deliver records. Now, transparency is a two-edged blade. Here's a couple of organizations that try to get us to focus on best practices, for example, to work around these issues. Unfortunately, governments ignore best practices pretty much as a rule. I've found that to be the case working in government. Trust me on that one. However, when it's good, it can be good, really good. Because government tends to ignore best practices, there's money to be made out there, and I'm sure some people are aware of that, some more than others. In fact, here's some examples that I have personally been in, seen the examples where they kind of make it cut on both sides. They can actually leverage that lack of transparency. So my big pitch tonight is that instead of playing Farmville, that we all instead FOIA till the cows come home with the bacon. And that way we can spread the wealth and information around a little. Thanks. My name is Roland Shield, and I'm happy to be here. I work in the sausage room next to the killing floor.
Thank you very much, Roland. We've got 2 more talks in this portion of Ignite, then we're going to be moving on to the Navtech LBS Challenge Awards. And our second to last talk is some research someone's done on human sense of direction. Please welcome up Drew.
Hello. I'm afraid I have no chickens, I have no lasers, I don't even have a name badge. I kind of snuck in the door, so you'll have to make do with my little hand-drawn one up here. One advantage of having such a mouthful of a last name is also that you can buy domain names, Twitter handles, all of that. It's nice and easy. I'm going to do some stretches while we get ready for the next slide. It's kind of like I'm on a treadmill. Can't press the button. Can't press the button. Okay. So I'm coming to you from the University of California, Santa Barbara, where I'm split between a geography department and a psychology department. Now, I'm afraid this is not a counseling department. I can't offer you medication or help of that sort. I happen to live up here in the Bay Area, where I'm involved in a startup and I do technical consulting. So this package of geography, psychology, and technology is what I'd like to talk about tonight. Stretch time. Incidentally, I hope you're enjoying it up here in the Yay area. Cue up the joke. Okay, we're here at Where 2.0. Presumably, we all understand the combination of the geographic and the technical, using the latest hemorrhaging edge technology to solve these geographic issues that have plagued us for centuries. So we talk about things like connecting devices. We talk about mapping the complex world. We're going to have 3 days of this, and it's important because this is important for the underlying infrastructure to make the combination happen. We're going to talk about how to improve the accuracy of positioning devices. We're going to talk about how to expand our geodata so that we can take people on trips across the ocean. And I'm interested in all of that. I like that. But I want to talk about people. I also want to talk about how people navigate. So I'm looking at this intersection here. And I bet there's some others out in this audience who are as well. So when you think about psychology, you understand that people get lost. Sometimes people don't even have a destination in mind, so you don't even have a problem to help them with. And we're talking a lot about spatial information. Spatial information is different from spatial knowledge. I'm talking spatial knowledge in the head, the things you and I both know when our iPhone batteries run out. So a few properties about spatial knowledge we know from a lot of research. We know it's distorted, but it's systematically distorted. It's not random. So say I ask you which is further west, San Diego or Reno. If you're like about, 80% of college students, you're going to tell me San Diego's further west. It's wrong, but it makes sense. Also, if I ask you to estimate the distance from point A to point B, call it the Eiffel Tower or whatever, you're going to tell me something different from B to A. That's not metric. We also know that everyone has different skills. And when we're placed in a new environment, we learn over time. None of this applies to spatial databases. It's a different set of rules. Now, we still can use this geotechnology to collect spatial knowledge. We can collect both spatial information and spatial knowledge, so where people physically are and where people think they are. Two different things. Blatant self-promotion, this happens to be my PhD research. Fortunately, none of you are on my committee, so you won't be signing off on it. But what I'm doing is I'm using mobile devices, and you may notice this Foursquare client here. I use mobile devices to ask people to estimate distances and directions to other locations they visited with the goal of helping them learn their way around and then personalizing these geo-services. So here is your standard run-of-the-mill map of physical reality. I don't know if you can make it out. I've put in some little icons to mark those points that I visited around Berkeley. One of them is where I get my granola. And here is a map of my cognitive reality. I'd like to toggle back and forth and show these changes to you, but it's been distorted. It's been distorted to show the spatial knowledge in my head. Now I'm going to end on a very, very, very blatant bit of self-promotion. I'm looking for users, and I think social networks are looking for features. There's my card. I would like to talk.
Thank you very much, Drew. And we have one final talk during this portion of Ignite, and that is from our OpenGeoStack speaker from earlier today to talk about data. Please welcome Paul Ramsey.
Brothers and sisters, we are all sinners. My data sucks. Your data sucks. His data sucks. But I'm not here to cast blame. I'm here to preach the power of self-knowledge because maps are dangerous things. People believe maps. That's why the first time you show someone their house on Google Earth, they say, "Who the hell stole my car?" Maps are truth. And people take that truth and they build information against that. I park my car outside my house. I go inside and I sit down at my computer and I put a place mark on the map exactly where my car is. But is that where my car is? Is it in front of my house or is it in front of my neighbor's house? Data does not exist in a vacuum. Most data is positioned relative to other data, which is positioned relative to other data. Where is here? Where am I standing right now? Anyone? Where am I standing right now? There. Excellent. A relative measurement. I enjoy that. That's one way of doing it. That's not the way you've gotten used to doing it, of course. Someone inevitably will have run up onto the top of the roof and gotten a GPS fix, right? Right? They will have done that. And that's a very comforting set of numbers, right? They look very precise. Do they not? GPS devices. We love GPS devices, right? They are our golden calves. They haven't been around very long, though, really, only 10, 15 years. They measure location based on signal time differences of nanoseconds. Frankly, it's a wonder they work at all. And they're not perfect, right? They're not infallible. Here's some data collected over 2 days around a known fixed location point. In order to get a 95% confidence bound, you have to define an error radius of 10 meters. That's a circle with a diameter of 60 feet. Perfection is not what it's about. And most of our data has been around longer than GPS. 40 years ago, when they were building this map, how did they know where anything was? Relative measurement. You're 10 feet from me. 10 feet from the street. 500 feet from City Hall. That's how I know where I am. I'm relative to City Hall. Back in the day, they started at Meads Ranch, Kansas. They measured out. And every time they took a measurement, they took note of its measurement error. They knew this was important because they were going to chain those measurements together. Back in the day when men were men and surveyors were mappers, you didn't look at your mountains in Google Earth. You climbed them with an electrotape on your back so you could figure out where the next mountain over was. And you could figure out within a range of 2 or 3 centimeters. And when you were done, what you had left over was a physical artifact, a survey monument like that one. That's outside my house in the sidewalk. And for every one of those monuments, there is a known location and there is a known error bound. Here's how not to do it. This map was compiled by the government of British Columbia. GIS analysts. They gathered CAD data. They digitized off paper maps. They stitched them all together, then they warped it until it looked good. But it had no error model. It had no reference to ground control, and that wouldn't have been a problem, right? One crappy roads layer, right? They threw it away 5 years later. But by then, the elections department had built a voting areas layer against that roads layer, the same crappy layer. They spent $2 million doing that. It puts me in the mind of the story of the Indian guru who says, "The earth is balanced upon the back of a giant tiger." And the student says, but guru, what is the tiger standing on? "The tiger stands upon an enormous elephant." But guru, what is the elephant stand? "The elephant rests upon a massive turtle." But guru, the turtle, where does the turtle stand? "After that, it's turtles all the way down." My data depends on your data, depends on his data. It is a chain of quality. And the quality of the entire chain rests upon the quality of each individual link. It is important that we know the errors in our data, that we communicate the errors in our data to our users. Which of these Google-based maps of China is correct? If you choose the wrong one and reference your data to it, your data will be 542 meters out. It's not like we can't communicate this stuff. We have good visual design examples of how to do it. The blue circle is great. Not only does it say there is an error, it says how big the error is too. We know how to do this stuff. Brothers and sisters, we are all sinners. But if we look inside our hearts, if we know the error of our ways and the error of our data, and we tell others about it, then we'll be on the path to salvation.
All right. Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you very much to all of our first round Ignite speakers. All right. And we've got 5 more talks. We're going to hit talks on Haiti again, patents, and we're going to end with some mapping from down under. So please welcome up the man who set up Haiti.ushahidi.com, crisis mapper Patrick Meyer.
Thanks, Brady. Thank you very much. So, am I ready? So, yeah, my name is Patrick. I work with this group called Ushahidi. I'm also the co-founder of the Crisis Mappers Network, and I'm also a PhD candidate at the Fletcher School at Tufts University in Boston, which is where I and many, many good friends launched the Ushahidi Crisis Map for Haiti. And we started actually in my living room with a few people, but we got to about 300 volunteers from around the world, really, who were basically providing the first responders and the humanitarian community with near real-time crisis mapping support for the operation. So literally the Marine Corps, FEMA, and others were using the map to send out the choppers and rescue people. And how did we do this? Well, we combed this vast ecosystem of information and really looking at the tweets that were coming out all manually. Facebook chat groups and so on. We even had one of our volunteers who was listening to French and Creole radio when people were calling in, and then he would basically add information and map information. So we would geolocate, we would code this information in near real time, and then place it on the map. And so what I want to do with this little Ignite talk is just share one of just really many examples that have happened when you combine this kind of technology with amazing volunteers. This is a picture of some good friends, Nico and Eric Rasmussen with Instead. And this picture is really literally taken right next to the airstrip at Port-au-Prince International Airport. And they are basically Skyping with us live, thanks to some of the great work that John Crowley did in civil-military coordination. And Eric was basically directly plugged into the search and rescue operation. So we set up the system whereby Anna Schultz, a good friend of mine, who's also a PhD candidate at Fletcher, he would basically give us reports of trapped individuals. And we would try and basically get the GPS coordinates for those locations. And sometimes they were very obscure. That evening, we got 7 locations from Eric, and we got, or Anna Schultz rather, got the first 6 pretty quickly, but the 7th one, Un Bon Prix near Napoleon Hotel, was a complete mystery, and there was obviously time pressure, not least because the SAR teams, the search and rescue teams, were going to be briefed at 0600 that next morning and sent out to try and find survivors at that location. So what we decided to do after trying on our own to get this information was to try to crowdsource it a little sort of wider. So we sent out a tweet on the Ushahidi tweet and basically said, please, if anybody has any information whatsoever on this location, we really need to know the address and GPS coordinates, obviously, so that we can send this back to the SAR teams. This was sort of mid-evening, and a little later, maybe just before midnight, a complete stranger went on the crisis map of Haiti, which is what this looks like, and clearly had seen our tweet, because when she entered an information incident, she basically copied and pasted the tweet that we had sent out just an hour earlier, and said, well, you know, no luck on Un Bon Prix, but it just turns out that the Napoli Inn Hotel belongs to the Holiday Inn, the chain of the Holiday Inn hotels, and so on. So, and even, you know, was kind enough to give us the exact address, Rue Capois number 10. So we were one step closer to finding that information. And so we went directly to our favorite resource, namely the Lonely Planet Guide, which we basically bought 2 copies of the day after the earthquake. And basically they're the most used guides that have never made it to Haiti. Really, really quite helpful information. On this one rare occasion, the Napoli Inn Hotel or the Holiday Inn that we were looking for was not there. But basically, Anna reasoned that the only building that was going to have a pool, in downtown Port-au-Prince along that road has got to be the Holiday Inn. And we had access to very high-resolution satellite imagery from the first sort of few days, even day 2. And we were able to locate the basic GPS coordinates for Anna's pool, which was part of the Napoli Inn Hotel. But of course, in relation to the Napoli Inn Hotel, we had no other information as to where Un Bon Prix was located, let alone what in the world Un Bon Prix was, right? It was not Au Bon Pain or anything. So you can imagine 1 o'clock sort of a.m. rolls around. We haven't slept literally for days, and I'm about to get 20 minutes of sleep, and I see a tweet come back completely out of the blue from a complete stranger who somehow had managed to find somebody who had worked at Un Bon Prix, which turned out to be a bookshop in downtown Port-au-Prince, had found this person's CV, and basically said, hey, you should check this guy out, Marc-Henri Louis, he lives in downtown Brooklyn. Here's his cell phone number, why don't you drop him a line? You can imagine at 1:30 a.m., not sleeping for a few days, that was a little surreal. But so we called the guy up, and he picked up on the second ring. Clearly he was awake, and with a mixture of French and English, and in 10, 15 minutes, we were able to actually sort of find out where in Port-au-Prince his former site of employment was by just guiding us. So that's pretty surreal, and what we then did, of course, was Skype that back. It was about 2 a.m. then, and Skype that information back to Eric and the search and rescue teams in downtown Port-au-Prince. Now, all we know is that out of the 7 locations that we found GPS coordinates for, only one of those locations had survivors. That's just, I think, obviously very, very tragic. But what's amazing about this is if you take a group of amazing, committed volunteers who've never worked on these platforms before, and you combine that with crowdsourcing, and you combine that with open source crisis mapping platforms, you can really do a lot like save lives. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Patrick will be speaking again tomorrow afternoon in the mobile track. And then Jeffrey Johnson, John Crowley, and Skylar Earle will be talking about work in Haiti on Thursday morning. And now we're going to have a talk on location-based advertising patents from Nick.
Please turn back a bit, just a bit. Hi, my name is Nick. Please raise your hand if you work for Google. Okay, then please raise your hand if you drink beer. Oh, that's what I thought. So I'm starting with beer. Okay, but can we do 2 slides back? Yeah? Can we do 2 slides back? Oh, not really. Okay. When I was a student, I cared about 3 things. Studying, beer, and girls, not always in that order. We had no money to go to bars, no cars for long shopping. So all we cared is that beer is cheap and close by. So we picked up the beer that was cheap and close by and drank it at whoever's apartment was available, at dorm, and probably at lectures. Now slides are not moving, yeah? Oh, they do. Okay. We came to the huge city of Moscow from all over the country, and we never knew where anything was, especially beer. So we spent a lot of time looking for things that and that time could be much better spent partying. Now my needs are more diverse, but finding things didn't change much. Even with navigators. And billboards are supposed to be helpful, but you pass them and they are outside of sight and out of mind. In the year 2000, I and my friends started our first software company. And when I started traveling for it, finding places in strange city became seriously urgent. So in the year 2005, we created a system that collected addresses for US, Canada, and UK from internet using artificial intelligence, name entity recognition, and we lost money on that. So we decided that next time we do something, customers will pay for inclusion. Forgot all the words. Anyway, we started our advertising system, and when we started it to launch last month, news broke that Google is awarded a broad patent on location-based advertising. Moreover, the day after we'll have launched in Russia, they have launched location-based advertising in Australia and New Zealand. And I thought that's the end. Until I browsed to Canberra and Melbourne, and all I found, that's after not browsing, that's after Googling, was a screenshot in someone's blog, 3 years old, and a note from Malik. I hope the new ones are not this hideous. Me too. So how in the world should location-based advertising work? We think that's the question we asked, and decided the location-based advertising should focus on location. That means that it should deliver the best advertising for the location and then for the context. And so if you are cruising San Jose for beer, it doesn't make sense if you get advertising for Sacramento, and it works very simple. You compute relevance of the ads, compute their efficiency and factor it in, and choose the best advertising on this place. And by the way, this results in the area in which advertising is visible be complex curvilinear shape that depends on location of other advertising, on the shape of the area of the interest. And that's something Google have not patented. Moreover, often all small businesses can afford is a sticker on the house or maybe even on bumper. And with virtual billboards, they can place advertising anywhere, even on campus. Moreover, a location-based service can build a route from the virtual billboard to the actual location of the venue. And with API, which allows API for advertisers, allows building innovative applications like moving your taxis on all participating in all participating applications in real time. And I said that's was a long answer to our question. The short answer is Paiduich's location-based advertising system, and we have launched in Russia in March, and we will hope to launch in the US this year. Thanks for your attention for my shameless boasting, and I'm thirsty now. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Nick. No need to hide your beer in this class. Our next speaker is going to talk about pinching and zooming maps. Please welcome Mark Sherman.
Thanks, Brady. Actually, I have to stand here for the first slide. Worked very hard on getting that. I want to talk to you about the vision we had from 2 years ago when we started Zoom Atlas and what we've been working on all this time. Zoom Atlas, we were thinking about what the state of the world was at the time, and we were looking at all the satellite imagery and the layers of maps over it, and we just couldn't zoom close enough. We would see a nice feature, we would try to get a little bit closer, but that damn zoom bar, you know, that was it. So we said, what is the perfect map? Why don't we put a photorealistic layer on top of the satellite imagery, and then the users could actually create exactly what was in that location. So after you do that, you can zoom in to any square inch of the map and see the vivid detail that really exists at that location. So we hired a bunch of people from the video gaming industry, artists, to put together this environment and make sure everything was categorized correctly, right down to the store, down to your cookie aisle, and you could even go inside. You could even go inside that pack of Oreo cookies and pick the exact cookie. Now, we're talking about a little bit of a vision here, but that's our ultimate goal. Back to the maps. if we knew what was in a location, like for example this runway, why not actually render it exactly the way it is on Earth so that you can zoom into any square inch? If you know about a sports field or a stadium, or in this case tennis courts, you can actually zoom into the exact and see precise detail right down to the shadowing at that location. And this is all part of our vision, and this is a lot of what's in Zoom Atlas today. If you know what's on your property, why not be able to lay it out and place where the house is and the driveway and the grass, and zoom right into the rooftop and see the vivid detail that exists at that location? Why not be able to do your entire neighborhood? Go to your community center, go to your school, go to the baseball field, and zoom right into home plate. We wanted to make it as easy as possible for the end users to do this. If the roads weren't correct, which we all know they're not always correct, give the user the power to make them correct, to adjust it with a very easy web-based editor that allows you to correct the roads or anything that you find there. If that's your property, place your house, the L-shaped ranch. Put all the features on there, the driveway, all the materials that you actually have on your property, and then watch the results as you zoom in and see the vivid detail. But of course, the world isn't as beautiful as our artists portray, so why not make it crappy? So if your neighborhood is really crappy, hey, knock yourself out. We want our maps to be realistic more than we want them to be beautiful. If we know where the roads are, why not paint a road? I mean, I don't like these little black bars that you get that they call themselves roads on maps. And why not add some motion to it, an animation, and actually bring your map to life? Why not be able to set the clock back? Take what's there right now and then set it back 30 years and look at what was there 30 years ago. Set it back 60 years. Look at the old farm that was on that property that turned into a shopping center and a church. Why not add you and me and your neighbor and your missing father that you never met? Why not add the person next door, the girl next door that you had your first slow dance with? Why not add the person you went to high school with, or the person next door, or the person that sat next to you in the office? Every one of these notes, and we're at 27,000 of them, every one of these are real notes that have been posted by users in the last few weeks since we launched. Yes, and why not add the crazy roommate that abused your cat? This is a real note. I shudder to think about that real woman. But why not add 3, 5, 100, 1,000 notes? This is real footage of New York City as of a couple of weeks ago and the Northeast. We're up to 27,000 notes today, and it's only been 3 months since we launched. And then take every note, and why don't you weave it into a history? So every user that posts notes at locations actually is building a personal timeline and display that timeline as a life path that you can share with your friends on Facebook. That's the vision of Zoom Atlas. That's what we started 2 years ago, and that's what gets us to work every day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. We've got just 2 more talks for you tonight, and our next one is about the mapping community down under. Please welcome Moritz.
Thank you, Brady. I'm actually a Dutchman, but I've been living in Australia for 10 years, so that gives me an opportunity to give you a bit like an outsider's view from the inside about location intelligence down under, and whether it's all about shorts, sandals, and theodolites, or whether it's actually more under the sun. Let's look at some common myths that we should debunk about Australia. No, everything's not upside down, thank you very much, and we don't go around with hats and corks. And finally, on the weekends, we do not go and wrestle crocodiles. So once we got that straight, what is true about Australia? Well, firstly, it is a very large country with actually very few people in it. What does it mean? There's lots of stuff to do and nobody to do it. So what we need is technology, and we need innovation to be able to just get along, get our act together. And of course, we have Bondi Beach, which gives us a great opportunity to have a surf before we go to work, or just hang out on the weekend, admire the view. Seriously, the topic of today, location intelligence down under, it's a bit of a schizophrenic situation. On the one hand, we have a culture, strong culture of surveying, which is a conservative, high-precision kind of culture. On the other hand, we've got lots of innovations, SMEs doing really exciting stuff because they got that culture of technology innovation. However, it's clumped together. This is Curtin University in Western Australia, and they see the spatial sciences as being geographic information science, mapping and mine and engineering surveying all together. Similarly, in Victoria, the major research areas of the Melbourne School of Geomatics, what is it? Measurement science, which is another great euphemism for surveying, as well as land management and spatial information. There are some lights at the end of the tunnel. In 2004, we got our own peak body, the Spatial Sciences Institute, was really only about location information. That was good, that was great. Of course, in 2009, bang, an S was added, and we got the surveyors right straight back in there again. You can ask yourself, what's the big deal, right? It's all about mapping, it's all about stuff on the land and cartography. Well, actually, surveyors look at life slightly different. They've got a little obsession. They call it the precision paralysis. Everything needs to be close to the nearest millimeter, which is great. But of course, everyone here in this conference knows that's not what it's about. It's the ubiquitous location awareness on our mobile devices. And if that's accurate by about 20 meters, who gives a damn? So does it mean we just throw up our hands in the air and give up? It's all doom and gloom? No, of course not. There's some great examples, as it said, about exciting innovation. And you don't even know about that it's Australian. Let's look at some examples. Has anyone heard of ArcPad? It's been around, very iconic application, been around for 10 years or so. It's actually made by a company in Melbourne called Maptel. Likewise, GML 3.0. It's been possible thanks to the driving forces of Simon Cox in Perth, Western Australia. Admittedly, he had some help from Canada and Germany. Another example would be ER-Mapper, now part of the ERDAS Apollo suite. It was for many, many years the benchmark in desktop image analysis. Another Australian application. And the last one, also from Perth, many of these are from Western Australia, is a product called NG-Watch, which is a real-time spatial complex event monitoring and processing tool that is doing hazard monitoring on high-voltage power lines in Australia, Canada, and the USA at the moment. One last one. There's probably some people over there know these guys. Anyone know these guys? I'll give you a hint. They're actually Danish, but they live in Australia. Better still, yes, they're Jens and Lars Rasmussen, and they're responsible for this. And yes, that also comes out of Australia. So, summing all that up, we can say it's actually not so bad. Australia is still on top. It is down under, it's a long time away, long while away, and it's big and empty. But it's doing quite well. Looking forward, looking at surveying, location information industry, as the University of New South Wales is saying on its website, acknowledging it's rapidly evolving disciplines, and it's my view that they will continue to evolve and to the point where they are absolutely separate disciplines. And with that in mind, I'm going to stay another outsider in Sydney, Australia for another 10 years, and I'd like you all to come and visit and see for yourself. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm just impressed there was not a single Road Warrior reference in there. We've got one more talk for you tonight, and then we'll let you graduate out to the bar or the bar downstairs. But I just want to let you know, tomorrow morning we're going to start bright and early at 9 a.m. We're going to Blaze from Microsoft, who recently gave the TED Talk. We'll be starting things off. Then Tim O'Reilly and the CIO of San Francisco will be having a conversation right after that, and we'll close out that first session with Michael Jones from Google. And now we're going to hear a talk on how people suck at naming places. Please welcome Sylvain.
Thanks. All right. So people suck at naming places. That's part of my reflection at Praise, where we build a platform for social action around places. You'll also see that and hear that English is my second language. It actually took me several months to say third instead of third. So, oh shit. Places are all about perception. I mean, if you search for nowhere on OpenStreetMaps, you actually find something, which I thought was quite philosophical. And places name are relative, fuzzy, temporal. If I say, meet me in East LA, how do you know where East LA is if you don't live in LA? If I tell you, meet me in Bristol at the Unicorn, do you know where to meet me? Also, places name are historical. Local administration, public services would change the name of a street, but if you've lived in a city for 50 years and this street has always been named Dorchester, even if you call it René Lévesque, it's still Dorchester for at least 10 years. And since humans define places name, humans are imperfect, so the namespace is really messy. If you try to parse text to match that to exact places, it's kind of messy. And if you add politics, religion, and ownership, that's harder. Let's try it in French. Find places in these sentences. J'ai quitté mon domicile qui se situe à la frontière des quartiers Outremont et Malène à Montréal, vers l'aéroport de Montréal, nommé Pierre-Éliott Trudeau, à Dorval, code YUL, au Québec. How many? Did you count? One thing that I learned is that smart data structures and dumb code works a lot better than the other way around. So, this idea of finding one ID scheme to map all the places seemed really wrong to me. So I said, do we really need one ID to rule them all? I'll let you read that. You know where it's from. I thought it was really, really wrong. So if you don't have one identification system for places, how do you map words to places? As the Perl motto says, there's more than one way to do it. So, you can infer location by lots of small hints in tweets or in Facebook status updates. There's ways to part that. But I learned about Tim Toady bicarbonate. There's more than one way to do it, but consistency is not a bad thing either. So lightweight identifier, as simple as possible, and web-wide. I mean, the web is distributed. We need something that works distributed around the web. So there's lots of name repositories. So you can find lots of good databases to get names. Okay, I list a few here. Most of these are open source or have open content license, so you can reuse them. There's lots of geographic indexes. So you can say, if I say I'm at the Marriott San Jose, you can map that. You can reverse geocode. So there's many maps API that you can use. So now you can start to do these things. But we really need IDs and ways to link that data together. I list a few of the IDs that are in common use on the web. I'm missing GeoHash here that was talked about this morning in the Twitter talk. So what we did was we built a site called Calgary.com, and we mined the activity streams coming out of Twitter on a few of those axes. And we discovered that there's explicit data. So if you have a Foursquare link on your check-in, I can parse that to the API and know where it is. And there's also implicit, what I need to derive. The other thing is that mechanically parsing data, most licenses suck, and you can't mechanically read them. So if I'm parsing something, I have to read the API and build in my system what's the license to get the data. Can I reuse it, distribute it? So I really like what the Flickr guys did, the gals, be a data hippie. They built this thing called the machine tags, which is awesome. It's just like service name, predicate, value. So it's like, this is a place, venue ID 641 in Foursquares or in Gowalla, and you can map. So this is my backup slide. I knew I would spill over, so this is just there for the next one. So I'd like to bootstrap this week and this weekend. So I know there's a Bird of Feather session on matching location on unstructured text. I'm interested in that. And I'll do a WhereCamp session this weekend on places in activity streams. This is the emerging standard for streams. So I really like places because they're social containers. That's the way we view the world. That's how we sort. That's how we filter from our human perspective the world around us. So I like the fact that I can have a place identifier, go around all the services, and see what's happening there. So thanks. You can find me online, and I'm here all week. Et merci pour avoir mis vos oreilles à mon accent. It's a pleasure to be here in California this week. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for coming out tonight.